That's Nick.
And that's Joseph, and today we're here to talk about The Aeronauts, which opens on December 6th, 2019, courtesy of Amazon Studios. Premiered at Telluride shortly before its Toronto International Film Festival.
Telluride makes me think of the new Kia Telluride. Anyway, go ahead.
Before TIFF, where I missed it because I wasn't interested in it then, and I definitely am not interested in it now after seeing it.
So when I read the synopsis, I thought it was going to be dry, and it's more dry than I had imagined. This film is boring as hell. I'm not sure why we needed this, and it's like not even like historically accurate. There are some many liberties taken, which seems so interesting for it to turn out to be so dull.
Yes.
But anyway, describe the story quickly.
So, well, it was directed by Tom Harper, who I guess the only thing I've seen by him before was the sequel to The Woman in Black.
Okay.
And he had a critical hit with Wild Rose, which came out earlier this year, I believe. So he wrote it with Jack Thorne, the scribe he's worked with before, and they adapted a scenario from a book by Richard Holmes called Falling Upwards, which detailed this 1860s balloon ride between two men, and they changed they changed one of the men, Henry Coxwell, into Felicity Jones's character, a made-up woman named Amelia, which I'm guessing is an allusion to Amelia Earhart. So basically she's a pilot, and her husband, played by Vincent Perez in a wasted role, dies, and Eddie Redmayne is a scientist, meteorologist that needs to get up to the heavens to study the atmosphere. And so some minor drama ensues as he tries to convince her to take him up there and be a cohort.
Yeah, so it's a slow-going film. Nothing really happens until the 70-minute mark when it sort of culminates.
Well, because they get so high, they set a record at the time for how high they went up together.
But of course, Eddie Redmayne's character wants to keep going. He wants to push it against Amelia's advice. And it creates some problems, which could have been catastrophic. They end up being able to safely land. But it's that brief, like 15-minute window towards the end of the film where the film kind of has a pulse. But outside of that,
an anemic one, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel bad because I don't like using the word boring, but this film really is just boring.
It's very dull.
The discoveries that were made from that flight, which at the very end of the film is explained that
in voiceover.
In voiceover, that due to that one remarkable trip, that was sort of the basis for like meteorology and weather forecasting or whatever.
Sure, as you would have predicted.
Which you would have predicted. So it just seems like uneventful and predictable.
I just don't understand. The liberties taken with the historical inaccuracy feel completely ridiculous. There were women scientists that are still needing of a biopic. They need to be recuperated by cinema somehow. And I really just think that the axe swings both ways. I don't think that forcing this kind of progression that wasn't there in the first place, it gives people a false sense of how things were. And we've talked about this at great length already outside of this segment, but just even, this is set in London, 1862, and there's scenes where there are, black people milling around with these high society white people while, the Civil War is raging across the Atlantic. And there's this made-up woman that didn't exist that's doing all these things. And I understand that it's inspiring for people to see things like that happened in those times, but not when they didn't happen. It's just like the Kevin Costner character in Hidden Figures knocking down the for colored only bathroom sign, and the director saying we have to show white people doing the right thing, but not if they fucking didn't do the right thing. Like, I don't know. That kind of shit drives me crazy, and that was on my mind through most of this film because I couldn't be distracted by anything actually happening on screen.
Well, that's because nothing was happening. But also,
that's my point.
But I agree with you. I think in this instance, it's not as
egregious.
It's not as egregious as like in a Hidden Figures or almost any other film with similar topics, but yeah. I just don't see why the story was like compelling enough for someone at Amazon to say like, let's throw 40 million at it.
Or I don't know how much.
Also, the visual, because I have read, reviews about this film, and people echo what you said,
yeah.
but also a lot of people are talking about how visually arresting this film is. I think it looks like, so many of those shots of them in the hot air balloon are close-ups, which just makes me, like, I can picture them in like a soundstage in front of a green screen in this basket. So I thought it looked pretty basic. There are some shots that are quite cool, and there is a sequence sort of in the culmination of the film that is pretty thrilling, if not predictable. But otherwise, I didn't think this film was that
and I think
remarkable.
We had talked about Robert Zemeckis' The Walk, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt played the Frenchman that, based on that documentary Man on a Wire. And even that film, which I don't think is a good film at all either, it
does a better job of expressing peril.
Yes.
This film, for someone like me who is afraid of heights, I got none of that from this film. Like, there are very few shots where I really felt like I understood how high up in the air they were, how vulnerable they were. That is not well done in this film. No,
the film's receiving praise for Felicity Jones' performance.
She's acting.
She's fine. She's acting. She is giving it 2 years. She's trying in a very.
And Eddie Redmayne is a good actor too. Like,
they're both. This is their reunion after The Theory of Everything, which you didn't see, where they played the Hawkings, which he won the Oscar for. And somebody else said this, but their chemistry is. It is like watching siblings. I don't find them exciting to experience. And then, of course, because the cinematography is receiving a lot of attention, George Steele, the cinematographer, I was looking at some past things he did, and in light of what else we've talked about here, he did this 1999 film called Enigma that Michael Apted directed, which was an earlier film about Alan Turing, from The Imitation Game.
Okay.
And they made him straight in that movie, which is my point exactly, and, it all depends on who's the master of the loom, I guess.
Anyway, I guess if you have Amazon Prime and you want to see a film about hot air balloons, maybe find a documentary about them.
Yeah, that's.
But I would give this film 2 out of 5 stars.
I'd give this 1 out of 5 stars for being 1 out of 5 stars for being historically inaccurate and dull.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry.
Bye.
Bye.